Let's get started. Hi everyone, my name is Oren and I'm the CEO and founder of Testim.io. We help writing tests and maintaining them about 100 times faster, writing tests. And then I'm going to show you how we did that and how it's hopefully it's going to help you. So let's get started. Um, well, about me, I've done a lot of things in the last 20 years. That's only half of them. Half of them were voluntary on the right side. I want to talk about first what are we talking about and what are we not talking about. So every step, it doesn't depend, it doesn't matter if it's unit test or end-to-end, there's three stages: the setup, the stimuli, the actions, and validation. I've worked on assertions for a lot of years. Now I'm working on the stimuli, which I'm going to talk about today. And the setup, I'm not sure people talk about enough, how to set up your database, and that's going to be in the next conference, hopefully. So we're talking about the actions. How do you find an element? How you click on it? So in order to run a test, after you set up the data, you want to make the clicks on the correct element. And the problem with end-to-end tests is that it's fragile. It keeps failing. There's no bug, but the tests fail. And you have to count on your test. We have to know when the test fails that it means that there's a bug. So we're going to talk about specifically here, we're going to focus on locating the elements. There's a different talk probably on the actions and assertions, but we're going to focus on that. So we're going to start with a 5-minute intro, so don't fall asleep. I want to make sure everyone's here and everyone in the audience watching later on will know exactly what we're talking about and what do we have, what can we use, and we'll talk more and more on how it can be used. So the query languages, it doesn't matter if it's if you're using mobile, web, or native desktop. Basically all applications work exactly the same. So we're trying to reverse engineer you. When you're talking about UI tests, you're reverse engineers the components that are on the screen. So in our case, there's a gallery that has an image inside, and there's another image reused in another place in the application. So the first thing that we know for specifically, let's talk about web application, it's all based of HTML elements that has a tag and some properties. That's it. And inner elements, that's it. It doesn't get that much complicated. So if you have a tag name, you can find that. You have CSS selectors. So first of all, who here knows CSS selectors? Who here knows XPath? Who here can tell me the differences between, not syntactically, between XPath and CSS? Sorry? There's a few more. We'll talk about a few small things. So first of all, we saw the tag name. We can find an element by tag name. That's very simple. You have this is how you use it. The second thing is you have an attribute. If you have an attribute, some key equals to value, you can find it using attribute locator. And of course, you have shortcuts. IDs and classes is so frequently used, so let's do shortcuts. And so you can find it using those query languages. And of course, we said you have child elements, so you can find something inside another thing using space. For example, we're not looking for just an image. We're looking for an image that's inside a gallery. So this query will find that specific gallery, that specific image. And of course, we need an logical AND. We want this and this. So this is used by concatenation. So we're talking about, that's why you put the tag name in first. It fits right in because then you can say, I want an image, a tag image, that also has some class named gallery and a title which is equals to 1. So it all works out. So it's an end. So XPath big advantage that CSS still doesn't have, it's called parent locators. So usually, as I told you, you can find in CSS, you can find an element that has a specific parent. So actually, the implementation for the browser, if you go back another one, it's not looking for a gallery and then for the image. Actually, it's looking for all the images, and then it's always looking which parent do I have that has a specific gallery. And sometimes you want to you want to find an element based on its child. So for here, for example, we want to find that element that has inner value. This is xxx, some tag name. So this is something that you currently couldn't do with CSS. Well, you will be soon, and but with XPath, it's relatively easy. So. So the parent locator is something very important. So usually you have like a checkbox and it has some text. You want to click the checkbox, but you want to click the checkbox not based on the parent. You want to take on his neighbor, his sibling. He has that text. So you want to go up and then down. You want to say, I want to have my sibling text. Or sometimes it's nested inside. So those are the basics. CSS, of course. Who here uses XPath? Who here uses CSS? Well, kind of similar. Well, people prefer CSS because web developers, they know CSS, not XPath. And it's a bit faster, but nobody really cares. Finding elements is really, really fast. So how do we choose the properties? We have a lot of different properties. We said 2 of them has like special meaning and, of course, text. So how do you choose which one to use? So I wanted to do like a game with you guys, and I'm going to present a problem. I'm going to tell you something failed, and I'm going to ask you if you can guess what failed. So you have some video player, and we wanted to write something that finds that play button. So okay, we said it has an ID. So let's use that. It's supposed to uniquely identify the object. So we said use that. And we said find element by an ID, and then we click play and we run the test, and it fails. I said, what? Yeah, so now we have to find out what happened. So let's just say the symptoms are, there's a lot of symptoms, but let's just say the most important symptom is I just ran it again. I just click play again. Why is it different? Anyone has a guess? Well, actually, you have HTML be that way. So the events propagate upwards. Most of the so it will still work. Anyone else has a real? Sorry? Wait with that. Let's go something simple. Just random ideas. Well, there's a lot. Who here saw that framework that generates random IDs? Yeah, we all saw that. There's a reason why I'm going. Don't worry, play with me. Like we have a few more. So this time, we did it a different project. You're using an ID and you ran it again, and you know that the HTML changed. So someone has an idea that you didn't write the code. Someone said I changed the HTML and now it's not working. What can be the error here? Well, the code changed. He changed the ID from A to B. Why? I don't know why, but it changed. So because when you're writing a test, you're like looking at it from the outside. It's called aspect-oriented programming. You're different concern, and if someone changes anything, your test fails. So now let's get a little bit trickier. Test failed. When I tried looking at it, I used jQuery to find it. I couldn't find it. So we got a hint from that guy. Of course, and we know there's a new version. Someone said there's a new version. So what can happen? So there's a new version and now it doesn't work. Only when there's a new version. Anyone? No, it's even cache killers. So iframe, the guy was right. It could be when you have. He probably said that because you stumble upon this. It's in an iframe, and you have to switch to an iframe. First of all, you have to switch to the right iframe. Switching to the right iframe, that can fail because you're trying to find it using I don't know, not just a number of like the source, but the source finding the correct iframe. This is a challenge by itself because the source keeps changing. You have cache killers. Oh, number 4. So we find that's what we find another element when we're looking. We saw that failing. We can, and then when we're looking for that, when you're in the console log, you're looking for it, and then it gives you a different element. How can that be? Anyone has a clue? Oh my God, same ID twice. This is so the browser says it has its uniquely ID. So the question, no, nobody really forces having uniquely IDs, and it's even worse than that. When you look for it, it gives you only the, for example, with jQuery, it gives you the first element and Selenium because it's not find elements, it's find elements. So it gives you the first one that it sees. So oh, we're in the last one for the ID. So I've seen this. These are all real things that I've seen. So I ran it and it fails 50% of the time. I said, what? 50%? And it's not a timing thing. It's just, I see it. I actually see it. And 2 bodies. In HTML, you shouldn't have 2 bodies, but there are all frameworks that actually generate 2 bodies. So when it uses one of them, I don't know how and why, but why? Why? So okay. So you say, okay, let's not stick to IDs. Let's go to use classes, right? We have reusable components, more than one. You can't even use IDs. You don't have multiple IDs. So you use class. What's the problem with classes? Sorry? They're not unique, but the first, their main purpose of classes is for styling. So you have your dark themes, but then you want to change your theme and you change their styling in your website, and the CSS guy changes the classes, and then it doesn't work again. So yeah, you change the styles. But your question was, your answer was also correct because it's not unique. When it's not unique, how can you find which one that you want? Because it's repeating. It's repeating, and the worst thing that you can use is when you want to find specific element. The second one is using the nth child. That's the worst thing that you can use. There's 2 things that I consider worst thing that can happen in test automation. First of all is sleep. When you said I want to sleep for 3 seconds, that's the source of all evil for me. And the second thing is the nth child. It breaks so easily. You add something, and you can test regression, but not monitoring, not the real production. It keeps changing. So no. So we have text. Well, you change the text. You can do A/B testing and say, oh no, that text works better, so use them. And partial links, it all breaks. So they consider all breaks. So who here knows about page objects? Yes, that's why I'm not talking about page objects. Thank you. I've added a link to, I've did a full talk on page object, how to do it right. It's a whole big thing about how to do it right. But we're not going to talk about it. But I'm going to talk about one small thing, like 1 minute, which is the nice thing about page object, which is the separation of concerns between if you have a gallery and an image. This is the only nice part is that gives you the concerns about the locators. Everyone has their own job, and when a locator breaks, you know exactly whose class is it and what went wrong and who to blame. That's when you want to go to the developer and say, it's your fault. So you don't want to go to the wrong developer, right? Maybe that's the bigger guy. So he's like, whoa. So what you want to do, of course, is separation of concerns. So the gallery knows how to find the gallery, and that's it. Of course, he knows how to find inside of it the image. So the gallery, it doesn't have to do anything about locating itself. Someone from the top always tell you, okay, here's the gallery, here's a pointer to it. So there's 2 options of using a pointer to an element. So you're all familiar with web elements? right? Hey, raise your hands. Yeah. So web elements, always like I saw 50% of the hands. So I'll explain. Web elements, when you use Selenium define element, you get another web element. It's like a pointer to that element, and so you can save a reference to the gallery when you on the constructor you save a reference to it, and now when someone tells you to I want to go full screen, and for doing that we have to find that image and click on it. So all we have to do is, given that we know which gallery there is, there might be 10, I don't care, but given that the specific gallery, someone gave it to me in the constructor, I just want to find the image inside. So we're separating, it's not big, huge locators that we have to look in everything. We're looking inside the specific web element, like a specific DOM, and then we're looking inside. So this is how we work with Selenium WebDriver, and how it used to be. Uh, so sorry, this is how it is in Selenium WebDriver. You find an element inside and click it. And the old way was you use strings. I think that's a typo there. It's not a web element gallery locator. It's a string. So you use a string. How someone passes how to find the gallery and actually how to find the image inside. You concat the strings with a space. I try to emphasize it on that you have a space between them. That means, given that I have a locator how to find that element, the gallery, I know how to find the image inside. So why am I showing you the two differences? Anyone have an idea when everyone thinks the web element is better, and it is. Who knows of an example when using the locator, the strings is even better? This. Oh my God, you've seen this, right? I didn't show it to anyone. I didn't put it online yet. How did you know? So the smart guy over there, he said, well, the web element is a reference directly to that element. So what happens if that element is now a different element? There's a lot of things, for example, I've done a lot of web in my time. I've even wrote a few MVC framework, and there's a few, for example, Angular, especially Angular 1, that if you write it the wrong way, after you click a few times, it creates another element. It's in exactly the same position. You don't know why, but it's a different, I can tell you why after the talk, but it creates another gallery. It looks exactly the same in the same place, but it's a different instance. But if you had web element reference, you reference the old element. It doesn't really care that there's a new one exactly in the same position. And the problem is that it's called stale exception, is that you're referencing something that doesn't exist anymore. But if you concat the two strings, what you're going to get is you always search from the beginning, from the root, always from like a fresh point. So when you're doing the reroutes, trying to locate it, it's going to find the right element. So, damn it, I didn't bring the chocolate. I wanted to throw chocolate, so great answer. So. But I remember one here, and who was there? Someone, yeah. So you solved this. Okay. So let's talk about record playback. That's who here hates record playback? I hated record playback for so long, and everyone keeps. I was telling everyone, no, you have to use just code, and for years, and everyone asked me. Can I use Selenium ID? And I said, no, never use it, never again. And still they used it, and still after a week they threw it away because it didn't work. And then people asked me, okay, Oren, why doesn't it work? Can you think about doing a Selenium ID that works? I said, no, I don't want to. Why? And then when I started actually, when you get 1,000 people asking the same thing, you say, wait a second, I'll take a look. And that's how I found the different IDs and the different scenarios that I showed you. And I tried to prove my friends that it can't work. Like literally it can't. Because when you take a snapshot of an object, how the application looks right now, most likely you don't know the application, and when you click play and you run it again, it's gonna fail. Not in a month when you change the ID or something else. It doesn't work when you just click play. So I started thinking, how can I make this work? So So this is why it sucks, because everything's it's because it's hard. That's why it's hard. Everyone's tried it, and I looked, and they all like basically are the same. They're all thinking about how to find a specific, what is the best locator, the best attribute to find an element. And I guess then when it hit me, and I thought, wait a second, why do I have to choose which best locator? Why not use, well, what is the best attribute? I don't know. Let's try them all. Because you have computers, you have supercomputers, and locating a 1,000 different paths to find an element, it takes about 20 milliseconds. So who cares? I used to take like 2 seconds, but now it takes 20 milliseconds. So why do we care about trying to find it in one way? So what we actually did was trying to figure it out, how to find it, not in one way that looks like this. That doesn't make sense. I try to use one of the, on AOL, wow, it's bad. I can't look at it. And I'm trying to make it, where can we use 1,000 different paths? And well, if most paths says it's that element, and one of them, because the ID changed, said it's that one, even though it's an ID, everyone says, oh, use ID. No, 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 no. If everyone says it's that one, then they're probably correct. And the second thing is what happens when things change. Most of the tools assume that your application doesn't change. Because a decade ago, when I was in IBM, we released a product every 6 months or every year. Today, you want to release every day, like twice a day. You want to have a feature, you want to take it out. That's it. You want to be continuous deployment. So what we did was exactly that. Maybe I'm going to show you for in a second. So let's see if it works. So we have an application. Testim is a Chrome extension. You just go to the website, click install, and what you got here. You see anything? Oh, yeah. So it's a Chrome extension. I thought it was going to be nice as a Chrome extension because half of the time you debug your code, it's in the developer tools. This is where the UI. This is where people usually right-click and said, give me the link. And of course, this is where you debug your application. So I said, this is where I want to be. So you just click to get started, and I didn't intend to do record playback. That was an accident. I wanted to write code that actually have better locators. And I'll show you in a second what we did. But when we found the better locators, and record playback just worked. So of course, I said, well, record playback, you have to have things like reuse. How do you reuse? And you see that it's very intuitive when you think about it. I said, wait a second, how do you reuse when you're writing code? You select a few statements, it said extract function, and then you have a function that's reusable. So we started exactly the same thing. Click and reuse, and let's call it my search, my login, and that's it. And that's reusable, so you can reuse it again and again. And I can reuse another thing, it's called my login, and that's it, another instance. And you can add pass parameters. But what I want to show you is not about the tool, it's about the locators. So we try to be, so if you write, record playback really sucks. Like it's like this slow. Right? And this is how a developer writes. Well, we want to help developers write it so that it's going to be much faster, like I just click. And you want to get a selector that actually not as good as a developer, even better. So how we did that was, let me show you. Exactly what I told you. We don't use one selector, one attribute, we use them all. Who am I to say which one is the right one and who's worst? We'll let the computer decide. And if you have enough statistics, and the important thing is not just to look at the second you record. It actually, the nice part is what happens when you run the test again and again. Nobody does that. I was shocked. Nobody improves over time. When you run again and again, you can improve. You can see that the ID is stable or not. If it's stable, use it. If it doesn't, don't use it. That's it. It's a bit more complicated because you don't use just one property. Usually, as I showed you, there's a component inside another component, which is another component. So for example, the nth child means you first have to find the parent locator, and then you can use that. For example, IDs are much more uniquely identified, so you have to find the body or some, and then you only have to, you can directly find the element. And of course, there's thing in the middle. So there's a class, but it's uniquely identified to the gallery, and there's two galleries. So you can try all different paths of finding that element automatically. You don't have to do anything. So you have to find out different locators, different attributes, and the connection of those attributes with parent elements. So when we try to do this, of course, then when you find you're able to find to locate elements, everything gets real easy. If you want to add text validation, it's easy. Just let me know which element you want to find it. So you find that element, and then you make sure the text works. And of course, you have to do a lot of retries because it's an Ajax application, and you pass from page to page, then you reload. So there's retries. If you want to add visual validations, anyone seen the visual validation talk yesterday? Great, right? Okay, so if you want any image validation, for example, amplitudes, you just use it. The same thing. You can use the arrows to say which object you want, and that's it. You have visual validations by amplitudes right here. So you have to find that element. That's the hard part. Almost everything the hard part is finding elements. And of course, if you want to write, this is how we got started. If you want to write code, just write code. Those building blocks like the login, it doesn't have to be recorded. You can write code. And of course, we help with, you can write whatever you want. That runs, it runs your code. But you can add dependency injection for elements. So you want to say, for example, I want you to find that element, just like the click, I want you to find that element before I run the code. So I'll rename it input. And even though it's an Ajax application, you go from page to page, all you have to write is input.value equals to Selenium Camp 2016. Just rules. This is the only line of code you want. You can give it a name if you want to be reusable, AOL search, and that's it. So you have a reusable, components, and the nice thing is that that's it. And you have something that works. You know exactly what went wrong. If you want to debug, you add a debugger here, or inside the code you just write debugger. That's a nice part. You know exactly what happened, because you can get screenshots. So that really helps a lot. And yeah, so it's going to wait and try to retry, so it's going to work and see how it works. And of course, we have the Selenium Camp here working. So I didn't tell you, but you can always ask questions. So if anyone has questions, now's the time. Sorry? Kinda. It depends on whether you want to hook it to the CI or not. So if you want to start using it right now and click and play, yeah, go right ahead. Go to for you guys, whatever everyone wants from me, like a free trial for a year. Talk to me after the talk, so you can. So it's like it's a gift. So I know how it is. Any more questions? Yes. Smart guy in the back. Yes. Okay. So first of all, you actually have it because you can reuse the login. You can reuse it again and again. And what we're trying to add right now is actually this is kind of like a function, but there's no what I want to add is like it's going to be another locator, which is the missing this. So for example, instead of writing my login or gallery show full screen, I want to work on a specific, choose which gallery do I want to work on. So you want to say, I wrote how to write some flow in a gallery, but now I want to reuse it and use it on this gallery. No, wait a second, I want to use it on this gallery. So you'll probably want to tell me which gallery do you want to use. So we're adding that as well, yeah. I'm a real advocate for page objects. I've done so many talks with page objects. But the problem I see is that people don't have enough time to write page object and do it right. 98% of the people in the world still use manual testing. Uh, there was a there was a recent survey showed that 90% people still heavily rely on manual testing. So even though I prefer writing code, I wanted this to be as fast as possible. You start in the same day, you hook it to the CI, to Jenkins, TeamCD, Circle CI, whatever, Travis CI, and I wanted people to have CI and continuous deployment the same day. Later on, when you want to refactor and add more stuff and move things, use more and more code instead of record playback, go right ahead. But the biggest thing that we added here was, and the basic was when you write some code, you didn't have to find that element. Finding the other element this is something that I worked on for months, just improving the algorithms of finding the element and improving over time. Every time you run it, it wants to improve. If you change that ID, it's not going to use it. But if that ID is becoming stable, then it's going to start using that again. And of course, using every other properties. It's not biased. Yes.
Is it configurable application, timeout or etc.?
Of course, there's a default which is I think is 30 seconds, but every step you can set your like a default. You can say I want you have like override timeout and says I want that specific step to be less than 2 seconds. That's so usually you want it for performance testing. You want to have I want it to the visual validation. I want it to be ready. Visually, exactly how I want it in under 5 seconds. Yeah. So, guys, I'm still going to be outside if you have more questions. And thank you.